to the Rosbifs Rugby preview of Oyonnax. Yes, we are going through all of the Pro Day teams and doing a little preview to hopefully give you a bit more insight ahead of the new season, where you can watch a bit of Pro Day Dirt on FR UK Rugby for live and free on YouTube in the UK and Ireland. So check them out if you haven't already. I'm sure you've heard of them over at FR UK Rugby. But if you appreciate learning more about French rugby in the English language, then Rosbifs Rugby is your one-stop shop for all of those things. So please subscribe and check us out on other social media. We're more active on other stuff as well. But let's get into this preview of Oyonnax. If you've watched the other videos in this series, you will know that a few of these clubs are small towns in the middle of nowhere that are really hard to get to, and Oyonnax is a classic of the style, if you like. It's kind of known for snow. It's near the Alps. It's almost as near to Mont Blanc as it is to Lyon, I think. And it's famous for the French resistance as well, which is kind of during the World War. It's quite near Germany and Switzerland. You know, Geneva is actually only an hour and a half drive away. Classic of the style in that it's a small French town. The stadium capacity is over half of the population of the town, so it's actually an incredible effort that they have previously been in the top 14 and even in the Champions Cup, which is kind of remarkable when it's a town of 20,000 people or 22,000 people. We've not been there, so awkward one to get to, but hoping to get there at some point. I mentioned that they came with, previously in the top 14 in the Champions Cup. Last season they finished 12th, which was a huge underperformance from one of many people. There were many people's favourites to go straight back up. They came in with a big budget. They previously, when they were in Pro Day 2, they dominated the league. So before they went up to top 14, I think they absolutely ran away with the league. Had one season in the top 14, came down last year and were shambolic at times. It's as kind of befitting their small town pride and the French resistance identity. They do play quite a gritty style of rugby. Forwards-based games, big men, but their defence has been kind of confoundingly bad at times over recent years, both in the top 14 and last year in Pro Day. Some of their performances were utterly insipid, just so bad, and their discipline at times was a huge issue. 34 yellows and 4 reds in 30 games is pretty bad, which is all weird things when you think of the kind of bond they have with Joe Alab. So Oyonnax got bit of press last season because Joe El Abd was job sharing between being head coach at Oyonnax and England defence coach because he's great mates with Steve Borthwick. That undoubtedly would have caused some disruption. I've got no doubt in that, because they they only won one game that he was away for, and to have your head coach kind of half in half out is not a good thing. But all the noises coming out of Oyonnax were that they all love. He's kind of a legend of the town. He's kind of won a local award awarded to him by the mayor and stuff like that. So we are expecting more from them this year. They've got Pro Day de pedigree. I think they are, of Pro Day de in its current guise, I think they are the most successful team in terms of titles. And they've still got a lot of quality in the squad. So Kevin Le Breton, the bloke, he was actually in the shortlist for the team of the season in top 14 the previous year. He's an absolute machine. He made an astonishing 418 tackles in 28 games last season with 18 turnovers. That is ridiculous stats. And he was brilliant in the top 14 the year before that. Another key player for them, Vasil Lobshanidze, Georgian starting scrum half for years. He's got 83 caps. Can bring some proper fizz. Those of you that have watched a bit of Georgia and the Tier 2 stuff or Rugby Europe Championship will know plenty about him, probably more about him than I do. But the key thing here with Lobshanidze is helping him bed in Luca McCarver, new signing, who is Georgia's starting fly half. He's signed from Cast, but he played one game at Cast. He's come in from Black Lion. He should slot in at 10, which will allow Zach Holmes, who was ultimately their kind of key man in a playmaking role last season. He was their highest point scorer. He was a highest point scorer despite the fact he only started half the games, or fewer than half the games at fly half. Statistically the third best goal kicker in the league, 87.5% is pretty impressive. They played their best rugby with him at 10, and they only lost a few of the games that he played in. he may well shift to 12 or 13. We've seen him do that for Toulouse, La Rochelle, Bordeaux in the past. He's got a very long and storied career in France and still a key player for Oyonnax. Last year was his first season as well out at Oyonnax, so be interesting to see how he settles in. They might kind of alternate between him and Matt Carver. You can guarantee that his experience is going to be pretty key. He'll probably play quite a few away games. Other unsung heroes in the squad: Lucas Mensah, I think a handful of caps for Argentina, 3 I think it is. And a regular inside centre last season, loads of tackles, loads of line breaks, loads of offloads. And Loic Gurdener, hard-nosed number 8, their main ball carrier. Second top try scorer last season as well from number 8. That kind of tells you a bit about their style of play. Gavin Stark, we want to give a shout out to as well. We met him on a night out in Po back in 2021 when he was playing for Biarritz. Just seemed like a good bloke. So one to watch out for, winger for Oyonnax. Hopefully he will have a good season as well. A few young players coming through. They've got Antonin Corso, who was a tight headlock in France under 20s. Not got much game time at Oyonnax yet, but certainly one to keep an eye on. He was pretty impressive in a strong France under 20s side. And Martin Villar, 22-year-old Argentine loosehead, been brought in from Bayonne. He did pretty well in the Challenge Cup last year. Didn't play loads of top 14, but pretty well in the Challenge Cup. 22-year-old loosehead. Always interesting to see when a young prop moves clubs, I think. Talking of Argentine looseheads, though, they have signed Maiko Vivas, who is the current starting loosehead in the Rugby Championship for Argentina. So he obviously won't come in straight away, but he replaces Ollie Kebbell, former Scotland international. That's a really interesting signing. Could be a key pickup for them and could help them kind of generally. They seem to be building a lot of depth at prop, which kind of signifies where they perhaps struggle. They need a bit of edge. Vano Karkadze, they've another man in the front row they've brought in, is Georgia's starting hooker. He scored a hat-trick in the Rugby Europe Championship final last year. He's kind of direct replacement for Teddy Durand, who goes down to Cast. Teddy Durand, who was top try scorer last season, he's moved to Cast. Real key player for them to lose. But Vano Karkadze comes in, pretty similar profile, also GIF qualified, which helps. They've signed Uzair Kassim, which will have taken a lot of the headlines in terms of Oyonnax signing, not only because of his status in the game. He was Springbok international, played a lot for Bayonne, especially when they first came up into top 14 in this round. Into this time they came up in the top 14, but is a really, really good player. Played some brilliant games for Bayonne last year. Was great in the game that I saw away at, not away, but in the Real Arena in San Sebastian. But also attracted a lot of the headlines in terms of Oyonnax signing because of the saga around his signing. He kind of moved to Nice, then we signed with Nice, and he was about to go to Biarritz, but eventually moved to Oyonnax. All a bit strange, but ultimately it's a good signing. I've mentioned Luke and Matt Carver. He could be one of the really, really top signings in Pro D2 this season. The other one I'm really interested to see is Danny Tawala, Samoan international, current Samoan international, started at 12 for Moana Pacifica. I know Artie Surveyor stole a lot of the headlines from Moana Pacifica this season, but a real key cog for Moana Pacifica in what was a really good season in Super Rugby. Power, bit of skill, that feels like an exciting one, presumably to start at 12. I don't think he'll come straight away because of the Pacific Nations Cup, so they may miss a few players because of those international games, and they do have them. In terms of losses, I mentioned Ollie Kebbell. He had a pretty good stint at Oyonnax last year. Ewan Johnson is actually quite a big loss. He clearly, at the Scotland International, he's become a Scotland International in his time at Oyonnax, certainly became a more regular member of Scotland's squads, and he's moved to Bayonne, which, you've got to be a good player to be picked up in the second row for Bayonne in this current Bayonne side. So he's a big loss. They also lose Chris Smith, the kind of former main man for the Bulls. Could have been a brilliant signing, but it clearly didn't work for him last season. And Matt Carver hopefully will settle much better than Chris Smith did. Generally, it's quite hard to call where Oyonnax is. You can see there's a lot of quality about in the squad, both top 14 quality, international quality. We don't know how they will fare with kind of club legend Joe Alab not at the helm. But we would expect a massive improvement on last season because they were shambolic at times and they've got plenty of quality in that squad and they've got Pro de prestige and heritage. So that is them wrapped up. We hope you found that interesting and useful and informative. If you did, please subscribe and let us know if you've got any thoughts on Oyonnax in the comments. Get in touch with any questions.